Hello and welcome to the Stateside Soccer Show. My name is Jordan. With me, as always, is Logan. How are you today, Logan?
Oh man, I'm doing well, Jordan. I am. It's Monday, so as well as you can be doing on a Monday, but
Super
pretty
Bowl
good.
Monday.
Super. Yes, it's not as super as Super Bowl Sunday. It super sucks. Having to
If
wake up
you're
after those games.
if you're outside Kansas City, it was probably
Yeah,
not a great Sunday.
yeah. Or if you hate Taylor Swift, also. So
Yeah. Um. Yeah, we gotta try to get her to date, move on from Travis Kelsey and pick like an MLS player. Really boost the league that
mhm.
way.
Yeah, no, I think that'd be a lot of fun. I think that all the Swifties coming to MLS, and there are rumors, Jordan, that she will be with Brittany Mahomes because Brittany owns the Casey Current. So we
Oh
talked with
yeah,
our friends from
and
another pod.
Pat Mahomes is part of the ownership of SKC.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's like, no, we kind of had something like that when it was Sebastian Lletget with like Becky
Mm,
G.
hmm.
He fumbled that, but for a while, we kind of got the boost from that. But imagine the Taylor Swift boost if she's like, if she was like dating. I'm trying to pick out like a random player that that she would date. She's like somebody that would be
Dax
in
McCarty.
yeah, somebody that would be in MLS for a while and not
Yeah.
like Duncan
Jordan Morris.
McGuire like on his
Right.
way out of Major League Soccer or something like.
Right.
Yeah, well, maybe that's a fun episode idea. Let's match make for Taylor Swift on who would get how would this get the league more popular. Um, yeah, so we are going to be doing our top 5 of the East preview today. So that is New England Revolution, Philadelphia Union, the Columbus Crew, um, the Orlando City SC, FC Cincinnati. Did I skip a team in there? No, that's all of them. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. And we're
New,
going to have a guest on for Cincinnati as well. What were you going to say,
yeah.
Logan?
New England, right? New England crew.
I said New England. Yeah,
Cincinnati.
I went
Philly.
order of the table, so I think
Okay.
we're good.
You got it then. All right. Good. Solid.
Uh, yeah. So who do we have? Who do we have joining us today to talk FC Cincinnati, the Supporter
Yes, we're gonna.
Shield winners?
Yeah, so we have a trialist joining us. His name is Justin Blair from Cincy Soccer Talk. So the same network, same show as the Weigels. I know the Weigels are. They've got. I think I was listening to Cincy Soccer Talk, and they said they have like 20 some odd people, maybe 30, that work for Cincy Soccer Talk. So there is a cast of characters over there, and they're a lot of fun. So if you're outside of the Cincinnati bubble and you want a good follow and information about Cincinnati, or just want a good time, these guys are and gals are people that can give you a good time. I always enjoy listening to them, so I'm excited to have Justin on.
Wow, 20 and 30. That's kind of like what we have going on here, isn't it?
Mm. Yeah, 25. Yep. They're in the shadow, like you don't see it. They're all sitting under here. You can't see them. They're off camera. They're our producers. So
Yeah, yeah. We actually have a huge squad of people that work for us. Don't pay attention to the people behind the curtain. But yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and do that. And like we've been doing the last time or two, we are going to start with the interview. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a short break here as we are going to transition over to our interview with Justin Blair to talk FC Cincinnati. And we are back from our break, and we're welcoming Justin Blair onto the show from Cincy Soccer Talk. Hello, Justin. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good. Just getting revved up for the MLS season, but obviously I got to do some scouting on Cavalier FC. So I buried in some Jamaican Premier League, but yeah, just doing great overall.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, like, let's jump into Jamaican Premier. No, I'm kidding. We'll jump into the five. I would like your 5 teams that you're really looking out for this year. But no, or Justin, I think it's cool because it's like I see the scarves in behind you, and I was like, this is by far, I think, the coolest setup that somebody's had that we've had on the show. And but I've noticed there is some black and yellow back there, but there's one in particular that's missing, I think, from your collection. I think I'll send you a crew when I have an extra one in case you want
No,
that.
no, I'll pass. I told everybody whenever I first started doing this, like Crew will be the last team that I'll have up here on the wall. I kind of cheated because going back to when I first started watching MLS, I was not a fan of the Galaxy. So I was like, I'm probably not going to do that, but I had to jump on that one. I love the colors, I love the scheme. So yeah, no Crew up here until, a few years down the road.
That's fitting. That's fair. I'll give you that one. So awesome. Well, thanks for jumping on. And we'll jump into the questions because I know we'll have a lot to talk about with Cincinnati. Jordan, do you want to jump in, or me, you?
Sure. I guess I can start.
All right.
If we look back at 2023, won the Supporter Shield, lose to the Crew in the playoffs, but you also have Lucho winning MVP. Kind of a huge rise from those years of having like 3 wooden spoons. Um, what went right for them this year, last year, and kind of what went wrong in those playoffs?
Yeah, so obviously winning the Supporter Shield was what went right. It it was just kind of a culmination, right? Obviously, people are familiar with Cincinnati's history. Not a let's just say it's a bare trophy case. So to be able to put some hardware to our name, something that you can go on Wikipedia and search, was fantastic. I know some people chagrin at the Supporters Shield as not being a real trophy. We're Supporters Shield truthers here in Cincinnati.
Same
Uh,
same in Philly.
but yeah, it's what went right this season was we were able to find some defensive stability. I think that has to be spoken on first. I mean, everybody going into the 2023 season looked at Cincinnati and said, "Hey, their attacking three with Brenner, Vasquez, and Costa are great, but they give up a lot of goals." Cincinnati kind of flipped that narrative last year and may have not had the offensive performance that we all expected, but defensively completely stepped up. Matt Miazga was a big part of that. Yerson Mosquera, obviously, and then Abina Nwobano. So 2 players that came in the middle of the summer transfer window last year, and then having a guy like Yerson Mosquera on loan from Wolves really helped solidify that we can win some grinded out games, right? It's not us going out and putting a bunch of balls in the net. It's we can find the way. And then, of course, Lucho Acosta is just the magic man. MVP season. Uh, you can't speak enough of what he matters to FC Cincinnati and how they want to play. When Lucho goes out, everyone everyone knows it. It's
Yep.
very painful to watch us progress the ball through the midfield when Lucho's not available. But what went wrong? I'd say probably kind of pair that up with the supporter shield. Um, chasing after the supporter shield may have hindered us in some aspects, right? Not so much in the Open Cup semifinal against Inter Miami. That was kind of a weird deal where we're coming back from leagues play and played the Crew only a few days before, but we saw it when it got to the playoffs. Our guys, those 2,500 minutes, really started showing up on their legs, and yeah, and it's unfortunate that it was the Crew, but the Crew was probably the most dangerous team going into the playoffs.
Yeah, I was going to say I think they obviously hit the Crew at the wrong time, and I think that was every team that was up against the Crew. It was like this team is incredibly hot. Just like I think as SKC was the same in the West. It was like, well, these teams are coming in on fire, and anybody that wants to mess with them are going to, and the Crew were just out of their mind, insane last year, just scoring goals and doing so at a clip that was impressive. And you kind of said, you talked about it in the playoffs, how how big was that loss? I mean, you guys were up 2-0 at halftime, I believe, and then drop it. Was it? I mean, was it devastating to fans? As it seemed, because it sure seemed like on Twitter. I mean, no pun intended. All hell was breaking loose.
Yeah, yeah, you can't deny it, and there's a bit of history with that score line. To be honest with you, we were up 2-0 at halftime against the Red Bulls in the famous 2017 Open Cup, and we ended up losing that game, and then of course. Another semifinal in the Open Cup against Lionel Messi and Inter Miami. We're up 2 goals, and then we find a way to not bring home the cup. So with it being the Crew, I think it just stuck a knife in fans. Hats off to our supporter section, though. They stayed through the entire celebration till the confetti was being swept off the field, drumming along. So shout out to those guys. But yeah, for the large majority of FC Cincinnati fans, you didn't get the MLS Cup, and that would have been the ultimate culmination for that season. And then to watch the Crew not only beat you in the Eastern Conference Final, but also to go on and get that win against LAFC in Crew Stadium, it was devastating. Lower.com field, I should say.
Yeah. Yeah, no. Yeah, you watch on and it was like, man, that was probably the worst thing that could have happened was to drop that in 2-0. I mean, the most dangerous lead in soccer, and it sure, I mean, it stuck. And I think all the theatrics and behind it, Miazga doing what he did, it created all sorts of issues in the playoffs last season. And a lot of people speak about Miazga in a way that I know there was a lot of talk about his accumulation of yellow cards, and I'm like, his mouth's going to get him in trouble, but that's kind of who he is. I mean, that's the intensity that he brings. I don't think that's a knock on the player himself, because it ultimately it springboards Cincinnati into that number one spot. They get the supporter shield. There's a reason Matt Miazga wore the captain band. It's not like he's out there and he's the 11th player on the list and he's out there running his mouth. You're going, what are you doing? You don't even play half the time. So
Yeah, defender of the year too.
right. Yeah, so it just didn't feel right when Miazga was getting the sole blame. It felt like, from at least on the outside it looked. But yeah, overall a really good season in 2023, and we had the Weigel twins on before, and just, I mean, it was constant Justin talking about just how bad this team had been. But then you start to get some stability, and I wanted to ask you about that because Jordan knows of this tree very well. But it's that Philadelphia Union blueprint kind of thing where it's Pat Noonan comes over, Chris Albright comes over. What exactly have they meant for the club in stabilizing this and getting out from underneath that bottom of the table? And now I think are contenders for years to come.
Yeah, so it's hard to pinpoint exactly what on the strategy of bringing in and roster building. Obviously, that spine that's kind of a hallmark of the Philadelphia Union, right? They have a solid center backs, they have a great six, and then they have good attacking play up top. And then you can fill in where you need to bring in good depth. Now, we obviously don't have the academy players that the Philadelphia Union have, but Albright brings a knowledge of MLS rules and how to manipulate, let's say the GAM and the TAM and the BAM and the WHAM, uh,
Right.
really well. And the other thing I think that can't go without saying, and it kind of bit us in the butt last year with our center back depth, but the willingness to be patient. That's something that Cincinnati has spent money. Cincinnati loves spending money. They want to win championships. But under former regimes, we would bring in big name players that may or may not have fit our system or not very good locker room pieces. And Albright and Noonan have shown a propensity to say, hey, we're not bringing in players because we need players in that position. We need to bring in the right player. And I think that Jim Curtin has always done that, right? Jim has always been good about having a good team chemistry for their whole roster. Even the young players that aren't getting minutes, they're not griping, they're not complaining. They find their spots, and then you get like a McGlynn, right? you get players like that pop up. So Cincinnati is in the process of building that, but obviously the supporter shield, you got to give credit to Dom Kinnear, Kenny Arena, and Pat Noonan on being able to figure out the pieces that they had in place, and going out and doing something with them. And the big part is the 3-5-2 that they decided to incorporate instead of the Philadelphia 4-4-2 diamond. So uh, hats off to both of them. They're on the right trajectory. You know, Pat Noonan, Coach of the Year, Chris Albright, GM of the Year. Sky's the limit for this club.
Yeah, and I think what's scary about them is, like you said, Cincinnati will spend the money, so they'll have a better opportunity than Philly, I think, to keep this up. Where Philly's going to have to rely on Ernst Tanner finding the diamonds in the rough continually for this to continue. While Cincy, like you said, right player, right time, but their budget opens up more of those players, I think.
Yes, and be able to absorb things, right? So we bring in Brenner at, what was it, $13 million,
Mm-hmm.
and we sell him on for $9 million. I think a lot of GMs would probably try to hold on to that investment for a little bit longer, but the ownership at Cincinnati wants to win. And if Brenner doesn't want to be at Cincinnati, he wants to be at Serie A, it's a good look for us. It opens up avenues. We can take that $4 million hit and move on from him, and then go out and get an Aaron Pipenza. So it's nice to have that luxury. And just to go on a little bit of a Philly thing, you got to be able to keep some of these players. It's kind of
Yeah.
a profit farm right now for Philadelphia.
Yeah, no, it's it's frustrating because I feel like Twitter will look at things through two lenses, right? You'll have the lenses of the hardcore fans, but then you also have the lenses of the hardcore U.S. men's national team fans who look at all of these prospects and they want to get them overseas. And my whole thought is, at times you need these players to want to play here in Major League Soccer. That's the end goal, is for these kids to be watching their team and say, I want to be like Bedoya. I want to be like these players that have been at this team for a long time. Some kids, like the Aaronsons, we've barely had a chance to really get the fruits of their labor in that regard. The fruit of the labor started becoming the transfer fee and not the product on the field for some of the players. Kind of the way Dallas moves on from players sometimes. But you talked about players moving on, and we did. Cincinnati did have some players leave, like Brandon Vasquez, Mosquera, Baji, Ray Gaddis, Brenner, as you were saying. So, what were your thoughts on these players getting shipped out?
Yeah, so we'll start with Brendan Vasquez. I mean, obviously, second place in the Golden Boot run in 2022. Uh, he was pivotal in the turnaround of FC Cincinnati, so it's a bit of a heartbreak for us. But last year, 8 goals isn't something to shake a stick at, but you could tell when Brenner moved on in the summer that people were keying in on Brandon Vasquez, and dynamic attacking two up front wasn't quite hitting the same. Brendan vocally spoke about wanting to move on and going other places, but being patient and trusting the ownership and the GM to make the right call on that. Obviously, Cincinnati was competing for trophies, so that was something in their best interest. But the time came up, and it was a mutual agreement. It was, okay, Brandon, wherever you want to go, we'll support that. Obviously we want fair market for you, but you go on. He goes down to Monterey, and he's absolutely been killing it for Monterey. Right now, he's out for right now. He's got a special day ahead of him that I probably shouldn't speak on it here on this podcast, but he has had an agreement to come back home for a short amount of time, and he'll be linking back up with Monterey. But yeah, I mean, banging in 3 goals in his first 2 starts. Not a bad cap for Brandon Vasquez, but it hurts Cincinnati in that we don't have that poacher up top, right? We don't have that long ball threat where you could have somebody that can bring down and hold up play in the midfield. So that's something we need to identify. Yerson Mosquera, it's a lone player. You're not going to be able to buy him off of Wolves, but we got glowing reviews from Wolves about our development of Yerson and our usage of Yerson, our facilities. So those things speak volumes in the future, right? Wolves will be interested. Other Premier Championship teams will be interested in doing business with FC Cincinnati for sure, and maybe even Villarreal, because right now Yerson just got another start at Villarreal, and he looked really good in that performance. And then Junior Moreno, he wanted more money, and we all know when you're getting those incentives that you promise players, it's hitting the cap space, right? So Supporter Shield definitely was probably on some of those bonuses, and that's hitting our cap space. So there just wasn't money with the current rules to keep Junior Moreno around. And, that's a best of luck. Go find somewhere else. Baji wanted more starting time, and Ray Gaddis is probably going to retire. So we lose pieces. But I think one of the biggest ones is Santi Arias. We haven't, to this day yet, we haven't identified a solid right back replacement for him. So I think that may be the biggest hit. And when you look up and down this list,
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, and we can kind of transition that too into the players coming in, because I think, and just kind of speaking to the departures, I was like, they've got at least 3 or 4 guys that were getting, I mean, major minutes, and Cincinnati had to do some retooling. And you look at this side, and I think immediately people point to Brandon Vasquez, and so that's going to be somebody that you're missing a ton. But it has felt that, like other teams that have been successful, Cincinnati knew when it was time to part ways and get those resources that you're going to get from Brandon Vasquez, because you don't know what Brandon's going to do in the year, after. Like, he could get hurt. There could be issues with transfer, trying to get money in. So I think selling to Monterey and getting that exposure, and like you said, I mean, these loan deals that Cincinnati seem to be capitalizing on, or just the development of players and shipping them off to the right systems and the right fit. It seems like Cincinnati is going to become this destination where players look at and go, at least if it doesn't work there, they're going to do right by me, and they're going to find me a place that fits. And these other clubs, like you said, they're going to want to do business with Cincinnati when they see that. So I think you make some really good points. And speaking of good business, I think that their offseason was good business. And I think some people are down on it, but I mean, I really like what they've added. I love Miles Robinson. We've talked about how good he is, one of the top center backs in this league. Easily going to be, I think, a European player at some point with international duties. And the guy's unbelievable. And especially in this league, I think people want to point at the U.S. men's national team and say, that's where Miles struggled. Well, yes, but you also got to look at the fact that he is still one of the best players in this league. They add Corey Baird up top, which I think is a phenomenal signing. He doesn't have to be that. I don't know where people are getting this idea where he's going to be this 12 to 15 goal scorer. He's never been that. He's going to play, the flute to the fiddle. Like, I don't understand where people are so negative towards it. They brought in Pavel Buka and Kip Keller, which I love those. And from everything that I've read and heard, and all of you guys talk about, Buka's been killing it. So just talk a little bit about these signings. I'm super excited for this team. I think this is exactly what they needed. If you're going to replace those players we mentioned above, this is how you do it.
yeah, I can't agree with you more. I think Buka is, like we talked about Junior Moreno, how many minutes he had. Junior Moreno was a phenomenal player at positioning. He was a smart player, a good leader, um, did a lot for this team. But with Junior Moreno, it really kind of hindered the midfield, I want to say, because
Yeah.
he never brought that attacking presence, right? He was able to find some scrap up goals and stuff like that, but it was he never played forward, and with FC Cincinnati, you watch them, it looked like it was Acosta, Barrial, or Santi Arias or bust, right? Nothing coming through the middle from that back line, right? So it was a subtraction, yes, in that leadership and experience, but Bucha is apparently one of those players that can go forward. Still have to see him play some minutes with our own eyes to be able to get a real good grasp on that. But yeah, Pat Noonan's been glowing about him. And with Corey Baird, I absolutely agree with you. I think a lot of people just slot that in as Brandon Vasquez replacement. I disagree. Now, probably not the goal pedigree of Brenner as well, but he gives that ability on the ball, which is, I mean, go straight down the list of Cincinnati. Santos isn't bringing that dynamicism. Baji wasn't a foot skill player, a player that can play smart with Lucho Acosta and Barrial up front. And then, you have Kimi Ordonez, who's a solid striker, but he's still very young and still trying to get his, feet underneath him. So you have to have somebody with ball skills. You know what you have with Bupenza. Bupenza is a great goal scorer, but he often played the same position as Vasquez. So you had two players up top that were, targets, but no one up top that could really threaten in the box, right? Somebody that was going to be able to make the defense adjust to them to find that open poacher, right? So I'm most excited about Baird coming in. And then Kip Keller, I think everybody was excited um, about the prospects, at least on FC Cincinnati's staff, because they had targeted Kip Keller as a potential draft pick. They ended up getting Ian Murphy. Ian Murphy obviously turned out pretty well. So they're excited about that project. But obviously, I mean, Miles Robinson, crown jewel it's probably the best um, free agent signing in all of Cincinnati. The Reds have never had a bigger signing than that, and nor have the Bengals. So
Thank goodness.
it's it's huge for us, right? For FC Cincinnati to become Cincinnati is not a destination city, being
Mhm.
in the Midwest and kind of riding that Ohio River. It's kind of hard to sell Cincinnati to big name, big players. It's not in Miami, it's not in LA, it's not in New York. So to be able to get a free agent like that says, "Hey, I like what you guys do there. I like your organization, Pat, Chris, you guys are smart. Let's go play for you." That was huge for Cincinnati.
I also think it's just one of the best free agent signings in Major League Soccer at this point. When I remember this league before they had free agents, you know, and now that you're getting to those free agent signings that are causing players to move within the league as free agents and make big impacts like that, it's like one of the first steps towards what we were aiming for when we added free agency. So I really like seeing him stay in Major League Soccer and go to a big competitor like Cincy from Atlanta is like that's what the dream was when we were originally thinking like let's get free agency in here, and we haven't really had that move before this. Like you would have I don't even know if I could think of one. You'd have some moves, but none of them at the level that Miles Robinson is at.
Not Aaron Long to LAFC.
Yeah,
Oh
no,
no, yeah.
no. I think I literally I think Dax McCarty, all of the teams that he's been on, I think he's been the most
But
exciting
he's been
for.
like traded to most of those
Right, that's
because some
true.
of those were
That is
before
true.
free agency. So
Yeah. Well,
I
hell,
think
he
this one, I think the one he just signed for was a free agent
yeah.
move.
I
But
think he wants a
yeah,
wall like Justin. He just wants jerseys and all over his
that
wallet.
he
Yeah, like that's all
from
mine.
his playing days, yeah.
Yep.
Well, you mentioned right back potentially being a hole for this team. Is there any other holes going into the 2024 season that you're potentially worried about?
uh, I wouldn't say necessarily worried about it. Okay, so both wing backs have to be. We have to find replacements or backups because Barrial, the news is that the European window closed and he didn't sign with a club over there. There was some rumors about Boca Juniors. There's been some disputing that on whether or not that was a valid option for him. But as it stands today, and we're recording this February 12th, um, I think that we are looking at definitely a summer move, right? Teams in Europe have a lot more ability, more freedom to make roster decisions in the summer. So Barriel is definitely going to be gone. So we need, yes, utilize him while he's here, but also be able to identify somebody who's going to step up in that role. Because having two wing backs in a 3-5-2, very wing back heavy attack. Um, it's a dangerous situation because you're asking like our problems from like I said last year, where we didn't have a lot of that direct play coming up through the middle. So now it's a question on whether or not we're going to be able to do that. And then I would have to say, in my personal opinion, this may not be the opinion of everybody at FC Cincinnati, find a way to get Lucho Acosta some breath. Having him play 2,500 minutes, while it does lead to an MVP season and a supporter shield, um, we have to be able to find somebody at least competent to play the 10 position. Everybody argues that you're not going to be able to replace Lucho. We don't need to. There's nobody like Lucho. He's proven it, right? We just need to find somebody who can come in, maybe a veteran in MLS that knows just a healthy amount of possession and just distribution, right? Doesn't need to be a Lucho of, nutmegging people going into the box and just doing a completely insane layoff into the top net. Like, we just need somebody who can be competent in the midfield. And FC Cincinnati, unfortunately, for now 2 seasons, haven't had that center attacking midfielder that can really step up and give him some relief.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask you one last question that we like to ask our guest, and that is, what is success? What is a successful season for FC Cincinnati going forward in 2024? I know there's a lot of pieces that are important to them, like you mentioned, Bupenza, you mentioned Lucho. There are players out there that are going to propel this team forward. But coming off a supporter shield, what do you think that this team is looking forward to in 2024, and what would they deem as success?
The fans would deem a trophy, a cup finish, as a success, right? MLS Cup, US Open Cup, Leagues Cup, Champions Cup. Just like putting a cup in the trophy case. I think for this team, it's to have a little bit more cohesion. The long term pieces are here. Be able to identify who your thoroughbreds are that are going to replace these players that we mentioned, and to be able to finish, we want an MLS. I think the floor, let's put it this way, the floor for FC Cincinnati is to make the playoffs and get a playoff win. The ceiling would be to, obviously, win one of the cups, two of the cups, think that makes a successful season for FC Cincinnati. I don't think supporter shield or table standings matter to FC Cincinnati a year after winning the supporter shield.
All right, Justin, if you want to share where everyone can follow your work and follow you on the social medias.
Yeah, so I work with Cincinnati Soccer Talk. You can find them on Twitter or X at Cincy Soccer Talk, and then you can find our website where we post a lot of our articles, podcasts, things of that nature at Cincinnati soccertalk.com. So,
all right, awesome. Thank you for coming on.
yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
All right, and thank you to Justin for coming on and talking FC Cincinnati with us. So let's wrap it up here with what we think a successful season and our report card for 2023 was. I had A+, getting supporter shield after those 3 wooden spoons, and they had 3 wooden spoons, and they had the year where they made the playoffs and lost to Philly, and then which was 2022, and then you had the launch into this year being a supporter shield. So they're getting incrementally better. They will have some issues, I think, with the losses a bit, but I'm still pretty confident they're going to be near the top of the table in the East, but I don't think you can give anything that less than an A plus, because when it ends with a trophy and you're the best team in the league, the only other way you can top that is by having a Supporter Shield and an MLS Cup at the end of the day. But A plus.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it. I'm going to give them an A plus, and honestly, they should have been Supporter Shield winners and MLS Cup winners. If they don't collapse against the Crew in the playoffs at home, then I mean, we're talking about one of the best teams that's had a season here in MLS in the last decade. So they were so very good, Jordan, during the regular season. Lucho Acosta is a phenomenal player, best player in this league until otherwise. I really do. I think that this team's got so much promise going forward. I love their signings. I love the Miles Robinson signing. I think Corey Baird will be serviceable. Yes, he's not a great striker and goal getter, but he's going to be good enough. And I think Lucho adds a ability to some of these players that I don't think other players do in the league. He seems to really understand how to get people the shots and goals that they need, and he's going to score a ton himself. So yeah, they'll be fine. They'll find somebody, I think, that'll be. They don't want to jump into anything. Aaron Pupenza is one of the most exciting young players. I mean, this team is stacked from top to bottom. They have Pat Noonan. They've got Chris Albright. They've got the ownership team that they need to spend money. This team's going to be successful for many, many, many years to come, and I'm excited for them because I think it was a long time coming after 3 wooden spoons.
A lot of people are finding Pupenza pretty entertaining, aren't they?
Yes, yes. The Gambian, or is it Gambian? Or, well, I forget his country, what it's called, but he got in trouble off field for a certain video that's being used as blackmail. But Jordan, he also has a video going around on the internet that is very popular as well, just not with Union fans, when he backheels a ball into the back of the net, and Jose Martinez didn't really appreciate the antic.
Yeah, I saw so many Union fans upset about that, and it's like it's preseason, guys.
You got to stop them though. Like that's what I always felt about showboating. If you don't want them to do that, don't let them do that. Stop it.
maybe look, I was a little bit more upset when Balotelli did it against the Galaxy in a
friendly.
In a friendly, because I felt like that's showing up your opponent and whatever. But this, I felt like, yeah, whatever. It's preseason, so maybe that sounds like I'm being a hypocrite there, but because it is preseason for Balotelli when he was doing it. But it's like, I don't know. I probably wouldn't have a problem with Balotelli doing it now either. It's just one of those things that I got looser with as I get older, and I'm not as I'm much more, I would say, comfortable with MLS's place in the world than I was when Balotelli did that, where you're like, oh, I wanted to show that we're blah, 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 a top league. I don't care about being a top league, really. I just want to be a good league, an entertaining league that can sustain itself here in America and be a playing spot for many people. So I had no problem with the back heel thing the way some people did. It's whatever. I kind of like that this Union Cincy feud is running deep now because
it
is like a family feud because they have so many people that have come from the Union to Cincy. Not even Sergio Santos, right? But not even that. You had Ray Gaddis, and then now you had Noonan and Albright. It's like this. I love it. It's like watching your
little brother,
your Padawan fall to the dark side, and you're like, you were supposed to destroy the Sith, not join them.
I love it.
Okay, let's go with successful season. I have kind of agreeing with Justin here. Deep playoff run or trophies, I think, is what it's going to take. A trophy, a deep playoff run without trophies, just meaning like maybe they get to MLS Cup final, maybe they get back to an Eastern Conference final, et cetera, et cetera. It's just, and it's not going to bother me where they end up on the table wise. Like he said, I think some people win that Supporter Shield and they realize how taxing is, and they're like, okay, next year we're going to go in and get second or third, and we're going to make the run that way, the way like Columbus did. And I think that sometimes is going to be the key to victory. There are some teams that win both, right? But usually I feel like the teams that win both are deeper teams. So when they rotate, they're still winning the games. But sometimes if you're playing your starters each time, it's wearing them out. So I have just making a deep playoff run, showing that you're here to stay and that you're not going to fall back down the table. So that's where I'm at.
I agree with you. Deep playoff run. Get yourself some silverware in any means necessary. I think would be a real success this year, because I think you can't leave this year without having won some silverware. And I think MLS Cup is where they're going to direct their attention. All you got to be, Jordan, is hot going into the playoffs, and the crew know that best. So they've done it 2 years in the last 5 years. So
I think you do have to be hot, but I think you don't want to be the SKC
right.
hot. What I mean by that is we talked about this when we covered them. You don't want to be the 9th place team or the 8th place team being the hot team, because you still have to go through the wild card. If you can be the hot team and be 3rd, like Columbus, I think you're golden, because you're in a top 4, which means you're hosting. And then you also have a good chance of hosting that cup game. Columbus hosting against LAFC could have been the difference, right? The same way we look at Union versus LAFC and say, well, if the Union would have hosted, maybe they win that game. It can make a difference. So still putting yourself in a position to win enough games that you're in the top 3 so you can host your first rounds and then have a chance of hosting that final, I think puts you up in the best spot possible. So, yeah, I would agree with that. Be hot going into it, but be 3rd. That you're probably looking at a good run there.
Yeah.
Okay, we ready to move on to New England?
Let's do it.
Okay, so New England, well, we can't tell you too much about 2023 because they won't tell you too much about what happened in 2023. Bruce Arena got put on administrative leave, resigned, and nobody told anyone why. So we can't tell you anything why. So they finished, 5th in the East. Kind of a fall from grace a little bit. They kind of became a circus at the end of it. Omar Gonzalez left. They've ended up, like we said, Bruce Arena left, all that kind of stuff. They're going to be bringing in Caleb Porter. We'll get to that. But if I'm looking at a report card of this team, I have to probably give them a C-. They've fallen down the table. They get 5th. They end up having to face the Union. The Union beat them in the best of 3. Move on. They were just totally on fire when it comes to what was going on that season. Bruce Arena getting in trouble, maybe going to be reinstated at some point. We don't know. But it really just collapsed from their previous run of being a top 4 team consistently. So I have C-. I do want to say one of the things that's thrown me off about the new playoff structure, Logan, is that when I was thinking about who the Union got bounced out by, I had to think it was Cincinnati. Because I was like, you know who I remember more? The Revolution, because we played them.
Yeah.
I think we only played them twice, but we were set to play them 3 times. And when and how long that round lasted, I think it was like 2 weeks. That round felt the longest. That, like, I remember that round better. When we talk about Sporting Kansas City, I remember that St. Louis series more than I remember who they got bounced by later, that I have to sit there and think. So that's kind of the downside of the new playoff structures. I remember the best of 3 better than any of the other games.
Yes, I agree with you, because I thought the same thing when I was doing Orlando's preview. It was like, the crew bounced us, but who the hell did we beat? I was like, what in the world? Because you have to do like the math. You're like, wait, how, what? So Nashville was the team that we beat, and I'd totally forgotten because it was a non-series anyway. But yeah, so talking about the Revolution, Jordan, like you said, they were one of the top teams in the East pre-Bruce firing, and then after that, they fell so quickly, and there was so much turmoil going in and around the club. I'm not sure it's really fixed. Like, you bring in Caleb Porter, and you have some of the existing pieces there that were still with the Bruce Arena debacle. Like, I don't know, it's very strange to me. I will say the Revolution have a good core, but I think that they're going to struggle based off of the fact that some of that core is starting the season on the shelf. So for last year, though, I mean, I'd give this a C minus and kind of hovering a D plus because it a season that started so promising with one of the best coaches that's ever done it in this league to being without that coach, and he's put on administrative leave, and the players don't seem to know what's going on. Omar Gonzalez, which he's a veteran center back that's been there for quite some time. He talked about just the kind of disarray that this club is in. So I don't know. Like it seems like he was pretty much telling you what exactly this was as far as this organization was, what was left of it. So yeah, I'm gonna go with C minus, hovering D plus, because I just feel like that this is what the season was for them. They were just a disappointment.
All right, so let's move on from 2023 the way that the Revs want to move on from 2023. But so they still have, Carles Heel, that's great. He's still that player that can help. They got DeJuan Jones, Shonkalai, right? The Argentine winger. You've got Polster still, Barrero, sorry. Joe Burrow. So we have okay, Caleb Porter, the new head coach. He's won 2 MLS Cups, one with the Crew and one with the Timbers. Kind of flames out after a few years, I guess you would say, or is just part of franchises that immediately just don't think it's good enough at a certain point. But 4 years with the Timbers, and of course 3 years with the Crew. 2 MLS Cups, an MLS Coach of the Year. I like this. I like Caleb Porter. This is the type of caliber coach I think that they need to go to, compared to when you look at some of these other clubs, Portland, that go for a different caliber of coach like Phil Neville, who hasn't really proved it in this league. And then you have Revs who are struggling, and they say, well, we lost our coach that consistently had us in the top and was a 4-time or more. I'm blanking on how many he's won. MLS Cup winner, Bruce Arena. Let's go get a 2-time winner. And 2-time winner with 2 different clubs, and in this current era of Major League Soccer. It's not like he is somebody like that won them like so long ago that you're sitting there thinking, why are we bringing out this retread? Caleb Porter, I think if you give him those 4 years, has a good chance of getting you back there. So I really do like the Caleb Porter signing. And I was thinking this probably would have been a good opportunity for somebody like DC United or somebody else to kind of grab a Caleb Porter. But it feels like it fits him going to the Revs.
Yeah, he's definitely a win now coach. I mean, he's done it with the Timbers. He's done it with the Crew. I feel like he's the guy you hire when you've got all the pieces in place, and he's just got to put the cherry on top. And he's been very successful at doing that. And I listened to an interview that he did with one of the Revs podcast, and he was talking about the fact that, like, when he comes into a situation, it's not really about how they adapt to his methodology. It's about how he adapts his methodology to the players. And he said, we've got some really special players here, like a Dylan Barrero, like a Carles Heel. Shonkalai is really good. And then you've got DeJuan Jones. You've got special talent and you've got the pieces in place. Now it's about, I think, trying to figure out where they go next and how special they can be. And I think this team can be special. I think Carles Heel is kind of like that Hani Mukhtar, Emmanuel Reynoso, Lucho Acosta. Like, he's in that echelon of players, especially when he's healthy. And this team, I don't think, has any reason to kind of doubt that they'll be in the playoff mix. And that's all you have to be. And Jordan, this is one of those teams that they're going to get players back from injury, like a Barrero, that are going to escalate this team's performance quite quickly. but it's going to take some time. I think by the summer they're going to have all their players back that were injured. Brandon By, like those guys are going to be back, and when they do come back, they're going to make a huge impact. And that's Jordan, the kind of team that we're looking at, like a crew that if they get hot and they figure out a striker, because I'm not sure if Veroni's it's 6 goals, hasn't scored an away goal, is a DP, sits on a DP contract. Like if they can somehow unlock him, or if Caleb Porter can unlock him a little bit, or if they can just get a consistent number 9 or a guy up top, I think this team can go to the next level. Now, I think that's also going to be what their pitfall might be. If they can't find consistency in goal scoring, I think that's ultimately what the issue is going to be. And they no longer have a Petrovic or a Matt Turner. They do have a new goalkeeper, but I think it's ultimately going to be up to this attacking front and the goalkeeper to be somewhat solid compared to what he's now, completely replacing, and 2 of the best goalkeepers that have played in this league. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the Revs put out there. I'm looking forward to seeing what Caleb Porter can do. And with some of these signings, like a Jonathan Mensah, Nick Lima, and then that Heinrich Rabas, which is, I think, how you pronounce that, is the goalkeeper. So interested. I think it can be a good team, but I also could see where this team might be struggling at the end of the season and disappointing once again.
Yeah. Okay. So last year they allowed 46 goals, right? That's okay. Like you said, they had Petrovic, he's gone. So different goalkeeper there. Omar Gonzalez gone, Gustavo Bo gone. So yeah, I guess that kind of sits with us right now of where do we see a successful season for this club going into 2024? The East is still going to be, I think we both agree, probably the premier conference. It's going to be pretty hard to kind of break into that top 4, right? What's their ceiling this year? What's a successful season? For me, I'd say to be a success, you're going to want to be in the top 4 if you finished 5th, right? Like that's just the obvious goal there is to get top 4, get a home playoff series. Maybe that's the difference in the Philly series. And then they also had other distractions. You can't really say, but now that you have a little bit more stability, you want to get that home series, the best of 3. And you want to be able to go in and take care of business, get in the top 4, get to another MLS Cup. Now, it doesn't mean that that's what they're going to do, but I think a successful season is top 4.
Yeah, natural progression would be top 4, and they were there all season before Bruce got fired. Like that first half of the season, They lived there. Like They were one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference, and I thought, oh man, this team is for real. Petrovic was still around. Like this is a damn good team. And now, Jordan, with Carlos Heel in his last year of his contract, with some of these players like a Brandon By, DeJuan Jones having aspirations to play elsewhere, like you're running out of time. Like you're right up against father time and the time clock that which you have a competitive window, and you make this Caleb Porter hire because it's a win now situation. It needs to be top 4. Anything less than that, Jordan's going to be a disappointment because I think this team has the structure to be there. I just worry that some of the injuries are going to catch up to them, and they just don't have that consistent number 9 that's going to be that big difference maker. And I think they end up being pretty similar to Nashville, and I think they've kind of regressed defensively. So yeah, we'll see what happens, but I'm going to say a successful season is a top 4, get that home playoff spot.
All right, we ready to move over to the Philadelphia Union?
Yeah, sure. Let's go.
All right, Philadelphia Union 2023 was a interesting year, I guess you would say, in the grand scheme of things. They finished 4th, giving up 41 goals, scoring 57, positive goal differential, 41 goals, pretty good defense. Second best in the top 4. Cincy and Orlando both had 39, tied for first there. They had scored the same amount of goals as Cincinnati. So you're looking at a pretty similar outlook there. It's just the wins were not there as much. They had 9 losses compared to Cincy's 5, and that's kind of the big difference in the 14-point window there from 4th to 1st. So let's say they go back to last year and Philly is playing good. Some of those losses become wins, and you're looking at maybe challenging for top 2 instead of top 4. Very odd season. Sometimes it felt like it wasn't ever going to really kick on for them, and then what do you know? They finish in the top 4. They get to the semifinals of the Leagues Cup, lose to Miami, get destroyed by Miami, but still lose to the eventual champion, so you can't get, I don't think, too upset. And then, lose to Cincinnati in the playoffs after they beat the Revs. So winning a playoff series, which is something that the Union used to never do, by the way. Their first playoff win was 2019 against the Red Bulls? I was there. So to go from that and then get to conference final, MLS Cup in the next 2 years, and then winning another playoff series, I don't take that for granted, right? So it's like, oh, we won another 2 playoff games in this season. That's pretty darn good compared to what we used to get. So that is kind of what I look at. If I'm looking back at this, I kind of give it a B-. Top 4 is great. Beating New England is great. Getting to a Leagues Cup semi, great. But again, another trophyless season. Don't get to the ultimate goal of MLS Cup. And at certain times, I'll knock them a little bit of grades for how they treated Bedoya originally. They've corrected that, thank God. But something was really wrong there and kind of put a cloud over the team. Then you had the Kai Wagner situation with trying to sign him, and then also his verbal abuse at Bobby Wood. So it was kind of like this very weird season. The most I can go is probably a B- when I'm looking at it.
Yeah, that's where I would sit with them. It was a strange year. Like they were in the headlines for the wrong reasons. It seemed like this Union team's not going to win a trophy. The window's closing, right? You and I have talked about this, where like we felt like the window is now. I think it's starting to close shut, and this might be it. Like you're gonna look past this year, and I think that there are some pieces that are going to be gone next year. And I was shocked that Julian Carranza and Mbazo come back. Like this team was interesting, and just the fact that Jordan, I looked on here and I was like, I didn't realize that they were actually pretty good defensively. Like yeah. I remember a time where we talked about we're like, oh, they're not as good as they once were. They only allowed 41 goals. That's nuts. Like that's so.
Yeah, they're not as good as they once were, but they are as good as they ever were. Right?
Yes, that's true, and as good as any other team in the league, which is wild because they were historically good defensively in the years prior. But man, this team. I think this might be a Jordan, but yeah, B-. I think that's where I would put him.
So we kind of alluded to some of this stuff, right? The re-signing of Kai Wagner, the re-signing of Alejandro Bedoya. This is probably his last year, by the way. He's projected to go into, like, part of his contract is being able to move into the front office in some capacity once he is out of the playing days. So I think it's a 1-year contract moving into the front office. So pretty interesting setup there for Bedoya. Kai Wagner, it sounds like he's going through the training of what he's deemed to do due to his suspension. So, it's not much you can really say about that. I know some people are kind of more of a unforgiving at that, but if he's actually trying to get better, I like to think people can get better, Logan, because if not, I really wonder what the hell we're doing, right? Like if we can't allow people to get better and change, then it's kind of a depressing world we live in. So hopefully he's becoming a better person through the diversity training and all that. A lot of the other moves, we don't really know. Pereira moving to NYCFC. He was there on loan before. Joe Bendick is no longer the backup goalkeeper. That is a win as they bring in Oliver Semley from Louisville City, where he was playing there. And I think with Blake, he's going to miss some time due to the tournaments and stuff. So this is probably going to be a great opportunity to have a fresh backup goalkeeper that's probably going to should be much better than Joe Bendick was. Bringing in Sanders Nagagbo from Bold Club, Lingby Bold Club. I don't know where that is. Isaiah LaFleur. Some of these signings were very late in like 2023. Nick Peranio, homegrown signing. Jamir Berdecchio from a loan move. Marcus Anderson coming over from Rayo Mahadahonda. And then he's a forward. I think he's mostly going to probably play in U2 is what it sounds like. Yeah, so he's from the Spanish third tier. So we don't really know how that'll translate, but I'm assuming that'll be a project of I think his contract's like a 3 or 4 year deal. So I think over the course of the next 2 seasons, probably building him up to be able to fill in for a few years afterwards. Ultimately, nothing really sexy when we're talking about signings. And not that they really need that at times, but you do worry. Carranza is probably going to be leaving in the summer, I would think. And he's the main one. You have a question on here if Wagner would stay. I think he's staying for good now. There's no way he re-signed and then they're going to ship him out. So I think he would have just left on a free agent, and he wouldn't have consigned himself to being stuck with having somebody else's fate in his hands. So I do think now he is at the point of he missed his boat to go back over to Europe. He's probably going to be here. Carranza, he's definitely probably bound in the summer. I think he said something recently that made me think that. But yeah, I mean, I don't really know what to think of some of these signings. I watched the highlight reel to Marcus Anderson, and it's like, yeah, it looks good at times, but it's like Spanish third tier. How does that translate to this? But then you also know that's how Kai Wagner came over from like the German third tier. So I can't really complain that much because it could turn out to be really great. It's tough, man. It's tough to look at what they've done. And I know this kind of drew some. We're on Goals TV, and we were having a healthy debate with some of the people from Goals and Jose, right? Some people are really lighting a fire saying that Jim Curtin needs to win it or else he's got to get out of there. And I'm like, it's not really, I don't really think this is a Jim Curtin issue. We talked about it with Justin when we were talking about Cincinnati, how much luckier Pat and Chris Albright are to be with the ownership that they moved over to with Cincy that are going to be able to spend money, while I feel like the Union ownership is not. They haven't been known to do that, and it's led to Ernst Tanner having to find some of these diamonds in the rough. And how many times can you hit on that? That is the big question. And for me, I just have it as, look, a successful season, they have to get top 3 and have a deeper playoff run. Maybe you pick up silverware somewhere. Will they do that? That's for our prediction show, because it's going to be tough with the depth. I really loved what they did last year with their signings after MLS Cup. I thought Pereira and
Julian
Carranza, Torres, right?
Yeah.
Torres coming in for depth. I really liked. He played well in the Columbus game and then just couldn't ever do that again. And then you also had the problem with Jim Curtin sometimes not rotating these guys. I don't know if that's indicative on the guys bringing in or if he just, like, we brought in depth. He didn't use the depth that much, but also the depth probably wasn't that good. So it's this. I'm actually thinking last year was probably a better offseason than this year and now I'm worried about that. So I don't know, man. It's going to be another weird season. I have faith that Curtin will get these guys playing and playing well, and they probably will be a good team again. It's just, can you get enough to get over the hump and win an MLS Cup?
Yeah, and I don't think Daniel Gazdag has the MVP type caliber season that he had before. Julian Carranza was a really nice surprise and one hell of a signing because he was not doing anything. Where was he? Miami. And Mikel Ura, like he's gonna be a 9, 10, 11 maybe goal guy a season, I think. And I think that's, I don't know, Jordan. I look at this team and they just seem, and I think it's because of their ownership. They just seem stuck with what they've got, and and it's been successful. So they're just like, run it back, run it back, run it back. Like it seems like this is what the Union are doing, and while it is successful, I do think they don't have to get the over the hump player. And unless Gazdag really continues to just tear up the league like he did the year prior, I just don't see it. But I don't know. Like I think it's going to be a weird year once again for the Philadelphia Union. They'll defend well, probably won't let people score. The goals will be there, but not in the opportune times. Like I don't know. Like I feel like they are just a really solid 3 to 4 seed, and that's basically what they've become, unless they had something else. And I think it's more likely they subtract. So, this will be interesting. I'm kind of interested to see what they do from here. If they would just get that one player, that would be that big difference maker. If they could find that, this team would then go back up towards the very top of some of these, I think, rankings and predictions. But right now, Jordan, I think a successful season for them, what that looks like is stay in the top 4. I know that's a really weird statement, but like stay in the top 4 and compete for a trophy. Like that's ultimately what this team's built to do, is to make a deep run in one of these tournaments. And I think it will be MLS Cup is what they're going for, but they've got to stay in the top 4, because I think that's, you start to flirt with some danger once you start under the 5 spot with some of these teams. And I think this is one of those teams that would flirt with danger if they dropped a little bit. So no, I don't think this is Jim Curtin's last year. Jim Curtin's just not given a roster that I think is great.
All right, let's move on to Columbus, the champions from last year. Report card, I have to give them an A+, right? I feel like you win MLS Cup under a brand new coach. Even not under a brand new coach, you win MLS Cup, that's an A+. I feel like it'd be really rough to be like, oh, they won MLS Cup, A-. Like I feel like you'd still be like, what are you dinging them on? They did the thing that people are trying to do. So A+, just incredible what they did last season. Just looking back at 2023, Nancy comes in, had a little bit of a struggle, right? That first game with the Union, 4-1 loss. And I said then, though, that they were going to be really good under him. So I take full credit for Columbus's win.
As you should.
I should, right? Like nobody else was saying that.
You definitely texted me and said that. Like, I remember. You were like, man, that crew team is very good. And I was like, nah.
You're like, it's 4-1. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I was like, Jordan, man, they got some pieces, man. But not.
And I said they're going to win MLS Cup against LAFC, and they're going to win that game handily.
Yeah, I couldn't believe you did that right after the first week. That was wild.
But no, I did say they were going to be good. But it took them a bit to get there, and then once they were hot, right? They did lose to Orlando late in the summer 4-3, where they blew a lead, and that was kind of a thing that was going on. But I mean, Chucho, 16 goals, 11 assists. Ali Ryan, 10 goals, 7 assists. Then they sold him in the summer. Christian Ramirez, 8 goals, 4 assists. Diego Rossi, 3 goals, 3 assists. Aiden Morris, 4 goals, 7 assists. They had Gressel, right? They end up losing Gressel in the offseason. That's really like their biggest loss, I feel like. A+. Logan, what do you have Are you gonna prove to me that you can give somebody that won MLS Cup something other than an A+?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with an A. No, I'm kidding. A plus. Like, I don't know where you could possibly ding this team, especially with the stretch they had after that summer loss in Orlando. Like, they crushed teams, and they put Cincinnati on their back, like, and just flattened them. Like yeah. This crew team, man, it's scary. It's scary going forward too. So A plus, and yeah, no, not much to say besides the fact that they sold Lucas Zellerant, who is arguably one of the best players in this league, and still won MLS
17
Cup,
goal contributions. Yeah.
right? And had been like an MVP candidate most of his time here. Like, that's just wild to me. That would be like Nashville selling Hani Mukhtar and be
Yeah.
like, we're still good.
But the thing
It's
is,
nuts.
they had Chucho, who
Wild.
had, we talked about Zellerant having 17 goal contributions. You have 27 goal contributions from Chucho.
Yeah.
So that'd be like if they sold Hani Mukhtar, but then ended up still
And
having
Surridge had a
Surridge
16
had a
goal.
great year. Yeah.
Not
21 goal
likely.
differential. Pretty good. Nagby, of course, is the heart of the team when you look at how many trophies he's won and just how good he's always on a team. Schulte, right, had a really great year coming from Crew 2. Their Crew 2 is kind of underrated because
Yes.
I feel like we don't talk about them enough when we talk about academies, and they come in and they actually perform at the Major League Soccer level, and they do it well. So that's how it's supposed to be. All right, so if they're bringing in some signings, they did sign up a backup goalkeeper, Nicholas Hagen. They bring in Derek Jones, free agent. He's still only 26. I remember Derek Jones, man. He's been around forever, and he's only 26. Played for Charlotte FC last, and we'll see where he really fits in this club. Mariano Heinz-Troza coming over from Pachuca. So he's a U22 initiative player. So that's an exciting signing there. And of course, they'll still have Chucho, Diego Rossi, Matan, Darlington Nagbe, Morera. Tons of really great players on this squad. I feel like I feel like there has to be, if you're looking at a successful season for this club, for the Crew, it has to be challenging for top 2 of the East, maybe challenging for that supporter shield, and then having another deep playoff run, maybe winning a trophy in another competition. If I'm them, I'm putting all my baskets in the CCC or Leagues Cup to say, hey, we're winning something different this time. We won 2 MLS Cups in the last 3 years. Let's go out there now and win one of these other trophies we don't get a shot at as much. CCC you don't always get into. Go out there and win that. Try to push for it. Get to a final. Get to the semis of it. Really make an effort and put forward your best foot in the CONCACAF Champions Cup.
Yeah, I think looking forward to 2024, they've got probably the most feared attacking three. Like Cucho, Christian Ramirez, and Diego Rossi. Like, that is a three-headed dragon ready to attack and kill its next predator or prey. Sorry, they are the predator. And Jordan, like, Darlington Nagbe is still Darlington Nagbe. Aiden Morris is finally bursting onto the scene and having a great career, and I think gets even better as the Crew go on. You do have in Heinz Stroza, a player that I think they're going to look forward to kind of be that Julian Gressel, where he's on that right wing back, making plays, creating space, and creating a way forward and a path forward for some of these attacking front three. And the good thing about the attacking front three, Jordan, they're not going anywhere, I don't think. Like, Cucho could. There is a chance that eventually he moves on, but the other two, Diego Rossi and Christian Ramirez, like, they've come back to this league, and I don't think they've got plans of moving. Darlington Nagbe, this is where he, I think, ends his career. Aiden Morris is always going to get some looks, but Schulte is one of the best goalkeepers as far as a ceiling is concerned. He's got one of the highest ceilings for a young keeper, and ultimately stood on his head when he needed to the most in some of those playoff series. And down the stretch in the season. They had Derek Jones, great veteran depth. They have the best coach, I think, arguably, in Wilfred Nancy. I think that he is a huge pinnacle for them. Like, they've gotten to the point where they have probably the best coach in MLS. And Jordan, I think Wilfred Nancy will eventually coach a bigger club, like a pretty big club in Europe. I think that's ultimately
Oh, in
where the end
Europe. I
goal.
was going to say, what?
Yeah.
LA Galaxy?
LAFC.
LAFC?
No,
Where
I'm
you
in
going?
Europe. Yeah, but so many players to build around. Alex Matan, Jordan, is a depth piece. Like, there's teams that would die for Alex Matan to be on their pitch. So yeah, it just, they're so much fun to watch. If they're
Please,
not
no
finishing,
clubs die for Matan because we've already lost so many American clubs in the history here. Let's not lose any more, please.
Yeah, no, you don't want to be like a Chivas. But yeah, no, I think looking at it, Jordan, all of it adds up to this team being one of the top teams, I think, in the Eastern Conference. They won MLS Cup. Maybe they go and try to defend their title, but I could see them pouring their resources into trying to win like a Leagues Cup, getting a deep run through Champions League, or start Champions Cup, because I think that's the level that we're at right now. And I think this team has the firepower, that front three, kind of like when Carlos Vela and Chicho Arango were with LAFC and firing on all cylinders. That's kind of what this feels like. Diego Rossi was with them. Like, this feels like that team that I think is going to be threatening for a couple of years now. And man, they're going to win something this year. It's just a matter of what.
Yeah, and I think some people would say, well, why not try to aim for like what was I trying to say? Sorry, I'm typing a note at the same time that I'm also trying to talk. Some people would say, okay, the successful season should maybe be back-to-back MLS Cups, but that's so tough to do. So tough to do. And also, if I'm a Crew fan, yes, I'll take another MLS Cup, but I want to win something different. I really want to get something like CONCACAF Champions Cup that only one MLS team has won, and or Leagues Cup in the middle of the summer, like something different that gets you a little bit more international notoriety, maybe from other areas. I don't know. I feel like that's what I would want as a fan. Like, if the Union had won the 2022 MLS Cup, I would have wanted us to really try to win a different trophy. It's like, we got Supporter Shield, we would have MLS Cup then. I'm like, yeah, let's go out and win the CONCACAF Champions League. Let's go. We got to the semis of the Leagues Cup. I thought that was pretty cool. But I know, obviously, if they, at the end of the year, if they didn't win any of those and they win MLS Cup, you'll be like, yeah, I'll take it. So I think just kind of growing, becoming like a team that's constantly in the hunt for trophies is something that they have a chance of doing under Wilfred Nancy. All right, let's move on to Orlando, reflecting on 2023. Logan, I'm going to pass this off more to you here, since you are an Orlando City fan and you have your tickets for opening night and all that. So set the stage on what 2023 was like, and what worked for them, and then give us your grade for that year.
Yeah, so I think 2023 overall, with exciting signings like Gaston Gonzalez, Martin Ojeda, you had guys that were coming into this side that I think were exciting for the team. Ivan Angulo, like, it felt like a team, Jordan, that was really building up to something special, and it delivered. They finished second in the Eastern Conference. They had one of the better their defenses in the league, under 40 goals allowed, which was really special for them, especially given the fact that Antonio Carlos played half the games this season, or last season, sorry, to play with Rodrigo Schlegel as kind of a center back, to put Duker Don, who nobody would have thought would have played a backline position. They found what seemingly is a good spot for him in that back line, which is wild, as a right back. Facundo Torres continued his pace. Erchan Kara got to be a player that we could ship off for some money, at least off of that disaster of a DP spot. And then, Jordan, the biggest surprise of them all, I think, and probably the most promising, was Duncan McGuire. Came onto the scene as a rookie, and performed extremely well. And Orlando's so good at this. Drafting these young kids and flipping them for great value. Tried to flip Duncan, but unfortunately that fell through with Blackburn. But Jordan, this team was just overall a lot of fun last year to watch, especially towards the latter stretch of the year, because that's when they really started to turn it on. And there were so many people that said, it's going to take time. And it was right after Leagues Cup that you really started to feel like this team was the real deal and that they could pretty much bounce anybody if there was just not a team that was extremely hot in the playoffs, which was unfortunate because they ran into the Crew. And so, they did. They got such great production. Martino Hayda started to play better. Ivan Angulo is probably one of the best wingers in this league, and I'll go to bat for him anytime. I think he gets ignored because of where he plays. I don't think Orlando is necessarily the one that gets talked about a ton, but I think they're getting there. I think this is becoming a team that is exciting. A lot of teams want to watch. And finally, Jordan, all these pieces are coming together like a Vilder Cartagena, Cesar Araujo. The list goes on and on. Like this team is deep and got deeper and added some really exciting players for 2024. So I'm really looking forward to it. I think that where it fell apart really is consistency in goal scoring, and the fact that like when Facundo Torres and Duncan aren't scoring, you're not really getting much from anybody else. Martino Hayda had flashes and moments where he was a goal scorer. He got 6 goals last year, but I think there are moments where you want more from him. And I think going forward, they're going to need more from him. I think he is, the Orlando City's losing a lot of players that have been staples for this team right down the center of the squad. And there's even pieces moving into like more of a depth piece because of the signings that they've made. But the fact that they're moving on from Mauricio Pereira and Antonio Carlos, like that's massive. Pedro Gallese is not getting any younger. So the window's now, ultimately, is what I'm saying. And I think that was, they're trying to find what fits and what works. Defensively, they need more consistency from their center back position. Rodrigo Schlegel is a great third center back. He's not a starting center back, and they knew that. And they need a more
good
consistent
backup goalie too.
He is a great backup keeper, which they didn't really have either. But yeah, I think finding a number 10, a more consistent 10, was also the issue. There are times where their offense can go stymie because they don't have anybody creating in that talisman spot, because Facundo Torres, while can play more central mid, doesn't. He comes inside quite a bit, but he's not somebody that's going to create in a 10 spot. So that's what they were looking forward to in 2024. Going forward, who can we add to kind of solidify that midfield and then add a more veteran experience and dangerous attacking 9. They've always wanted a DP 9, and they've talked about this for years, and it's finally come to fruition.
So did you give a grade for last year? Because I didn't.
I'm going to give it an A-. Like,
A-.
I think this club, from where they began, Jordan, when people were looking at them going, oh goodness, like this is, they should really, it should be better than this. And then all of a sudden it flipped, and it was like, oh yeah, that's the team we expected.
Yeah, I have B+.
Yeah.
Is what I have. I like the Ladero signing as we're going into 2024. I know you were kind of out on that a little bit as a 34-year-old, but
yeah,
I know maybe some of the preseason stuff has helped you with that.
Yes.
So successful season then, I would have, look, you finished second. You're going to have to, again, be in this top 2, top 3 of the East, but I think you have to challenge more for an actual title. So what I mean by that is the playoffs weren't really great. They've been to playoffs like 4 times now under Pereira. That's something that they weren't really featuring in a lot. They won an Open Cup. Pretty good run here by Pereira so far. Now he's back, and like you said, the window's kind of now. So I think you have to start proving that by having deeper runs in the playoffs, trying to get to an actual final to win a cup again. That's where I'm looking at. Whether it's MLS Cup, whether it's Leagues Cup, CCC, they have to be putting their best foot forward here in trying to actually win trophies. So I have top 2 and 3 and challenge for an actual trophy.
A successful year, Jordan, for this team is, like you said, I think one of the top spots in the East, and competing for an MLS Cup or Supporters Shield. I think ultimately this team can get there because of the signings they've made. Luis Muriel is coming over from Atalanta, was a Champion League player over in Europe, has had tremendous success and has scored a ton. Paperwork is supposed to be done tomorrow, supposedly, but has scored 103 goals in Serie A, is a prolific goal scorer. In the last 2 years, he's had a dip, but I think it's more of, he's aging. That's an older player in Europe. And, I think as he got older, it's been harder for him to get more acclimated to playing some of these great defensive teams that exist in Europe. But that's a huge signing. Nico Ladero, I think, is a really good signing. I think he'll be a nice depth piece if he doesn't start right in behind Martin Ojeda. So they've added a bunch of depth. David Bricalo, who's the center back that they've added, is a tremendous player. He's played for Slovenia side in Cape Bravo, which if you've seen any highlights, the guy's a massive goal threat, like can score off headers. Like it's exactly what they need. They need an intense defender, and they got one. So you've got the Viking, and then you've got Bricalo, who looks like a Viking. It's all going to go well, I think, as far as center backs. Like, I think they will become one of the better defensive teams in this league just because of that addition. Sorry, tickle in my throat. Pereira is back, which is massive. Oh, man, hold on. I need to get water.
All these signings are like choking Logan up.
Yeah, dude, I'm so excited. No, but again, I really do. I think that we're going to look at this and say, man, Orlando did a great job in the offseason, because I think the pieces they've added with Ancula being permanent from Palermo's now, like this is just a team that can compete for championships. And I think they finally, Jordan, have a team that can do it. If Luis Muriel is that 10 to 15 goal scorer, like this team is scary, and Duncan McGuire's back. So even if it doesn't work out with Muriel, I think you've got Duncan as kind of a backup option, which they could play a 2-striker set at some point, and maybe Facundo Torres drops into like a midfield position. But man, this team, it looks good on paper, Jordan. This is the most excited I've been for Orlando City since we've started this podcast. So I think a successful season, one of the top spots in the East, 1 or 2, and I'd say a deep run into one of these competitions, and I think that would be the MLS Cup playoffs. I think they need to get to an Eastern Conference final at least.
All right. Had to write that down. That wraps it up, because Cincinnati we previewed at the top of the show. All right, so what's coming up the rest of this week as we build up to? We are 9
We're there, baby.
9 days away. Because it'll be a week on Wednesday. So it's coming quick. This Sunday we're recording our prediction show, where we're going to give you who is not going to win MLS Cup, who's not going to win MVP, because we're always wrong, and who's not going to finish in the spots that we put. So we'll have our predictions. We'll see how they go. We also just did an episode, if you want some U.S. men's national team coverage. Logan came up with our idea here, where we did the State of the Union of the player pool. And we picked strikers. And we just kind of went through the top 10 in the pool and kind of thought who has a good shot at making 2026 and, Copa this year and all that kind of stuff, and where they currently stand in the pool and all that. So make sure you check that out. Prediction show coming up on Sunday, which means it's probably going to release late Sunday, early Monday. And then our kit video, where we rank the kits of the MLS 2024 season. We'll be recording that on the Tuesday before it kicks off, for a release on Wednesday. So the day that the season starts, you can go through and hear all of our thoughts on MLS's 2024 kits that have been released. So looking forward to that. We rank them on a case by case of buy it now, wait for Ross, don't buy, and burn it. So we'll see how that goes. And then we'll get into our real coverage once the games start kicking off. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Really looking forward to that. Logan's going to Orlando's home opener. Is that the first week, or is that on a other week?
Yeah.
They open at
It's
home?
Yep. Saturday the 24th against Montreal. So
Nice.
looking forward to it. Yep.
Night game?
Yeah, 7:30. And we're sitting. This is the first time, Jordan. I kind of regret where we're sitting because we're sitting where the players will typically warm up for Orlando City during the half. So they'll be running back and forth. But we're first row, right behind the goal, just to the right hand side if you're facing goal.
Nice.
Yeah, it'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, so looking forward to Logan's talk of that. I'll see if I can get to the Union game through credentials or not. We'll see how that goes. And then, CONCACAF Champions Cup started with Vancouver. It's like the only MLS team that's started yet, but then the rest are going to start next week on the 20th. So maybe on the prediction show, we'll kind of just when we always look at what games are coming up, we'll talk about what games are coming up on that day. All right. Well, if you want to tell us that we got anything wrong, you want to tell us if this was a boring podcast, you can comment on the YouTube video below. You can like and subscribe as well. You can also tell us if it was an entertaining podcast. And you can also rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You can contact us as well. If you don't feel like commenting on the YouTube video, you can contact us via social media at Stateside Show on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, all of those good socials. Or you can email us, statesideshow@gmail.com. Have a great rest of your week. Thank you for sticking with us through all of our previews. The previews are done. The predictions are coming up, and you can yell at us about where we put your team next time.